Before we begin, candidate Anthony Luce has asked me to say in a few words on his behalf, which all other candidates are more than happy for me to do. As you may be aware, Anthony has aphasia, a speech and language disorder, caused by a serious stroke 10 years ago. He is taking a full part in this senatorial campaign, but his difficulties with language mean that the traditional Hustings format of questions without notice is not practical for him. So he will not be answering questions tonight. Aphasia is a condition that affects communication but not ability. He will be responding to questions online on his Facebook page, and he will also be holding a number of surgeries which are better formats for his particular disability. Anthony has asked me to thank you for your understanding. Now, as it happens, it's just gone 7:30. And the first person who will address us will be Anthony via his iPad.
You have never seen a candidate like me before. I am different. I have a different campaign and a different voice, but different is what Jersey needs. My stroke has left me disabled, but it has given me courage, determination and new insight. I will represent those who, like me, don't have a voice. Not just the disabled but everyone who feels that today's politicians don't speak for them. What is the future for Jersey? Where do we want to go? My focus includes the environment, equality, and community. We need to improve the community of Jersey. We need to improve the environment. It will cost money, but it is an investment for my children and your children. There is no clear voice for the environment in the current states. There can be no silos. We need to share more information. Equality. I bring a new perspective, one formed by both success and hardship. I believe mental health provision must be higher up the political agenda. More understanding and reduced stigma. Where we see inequality and stigma in Jersey, it should be fought. We need less old boys club. We are improving and have more cosmopolitan living. To create a more equal island. The dangers of having an island of haves and have-nots. I believe that the most marginalized and downtrodden members of our society have something to contribute. From the inmate at Lemoy to the homeless man in the parade. We all have insights and abilities to help make Jersey a better place to live. The different communities in Jersey. Everyone has skills and talents. Everyone. We need a system that allows those talents to flourish. The first step is to break down our own inbuilt stigmas. That is a role of education and defining common goals. Our children and their schooling hold the key. It is then identifying those abilities and channeling them where they are most needed. We need more social enterprises to create businesses and programs that build on our social capital. Like my campaign headquarters, the Beresford Street Kitchen. Communities working together makes us all stronger, and it starts at school. We also need greater recognition of support. The voluntary sector. With more effort from the states, we can better coordinate the work that charities do. I will be the first person with aphasia to stand for the states. I appreciate that makes me different. I hope that I will be able to represent islanders, who don't always fit in with the norm. If you believe in these things too, then vote for me, and together, we can make a change. Thank you.
Mr. Baudin.
Now, I believe dissatisfaction with the present government has probably never been greater, and we need change. But I'm afraid, judging by the questions that have been asked of candidates, especially by email, that we're probably headed for more of the same. And perhaps this analogy would help. Suppose we're on a cruise ship, Somebody says there's a bit of a fire down in the engine room and the smoke is getting a little thicker, but hey, it's a lovely day, the sun is shining, we're on the deck, we're chatting with fellow passengers. Some are deciding whether they should have lobster or steak for dinner, and others asking, should I have white or red wine? A third is saying, well, you know, I wonder what bow tie would go best with my dinner jacket. People are asking the wrong questions. The ship's on fire, and yet they're asking whether they should wear bow tie. Just as we are asking the wrong questions in this election. It doesn't really matter what candidates' views are on the subjects being raised. Questions along the lines of, if elected, what will the candidate do about so-and-so, are not relevant. Why? Because in 2005 we changed from a committee government to a ministerial one. If your candidate becomes a minister, then their manifesto disappears into the bin because they're signed up to the council's agenda. If a backbencher, well, they're relegated to scrutiny and have no input anyway. Manifestos are now virtually meaningless. On our cruise ship, unless you put out the fire, well, there's no point in discussing wine and bow ties because there's not going to be any dinner. With the states, until we revise our system of government, ministers will carry on as usual and little or nothing will change. If you want your candidate to be able to pursue the sort of issues currently being asked, then you need to ask a different question, such as, why don't politicians listen to the public, and what would you do about it? I cannot stress strongly enough, unless we devise a more inclusive system where ministers and those currently in scrutiny are actually working in the same team, as was previously the case, then more of the same is guaranteed. That's not what people want, so make sure you elect only those candidates who promise to change the system. Hoping new faces with new policies will make any difference would be a grave mistake. It made no difference at the last election, and it won't at this one. For my part, if elected, I would like the post of Assistant Chief Minister, because that would enable me to drive change from the top. Remember, ministers run the island, and they rule the states essentially, so working with them is the best way of achieving progress. The post would also enable me to address the major issue of immigration, as that comes within the Assistant Minister's remit. I would be honoured to receive one of your votes on May the 16th, and thank you for listening.
Deputy Moore.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My campaign is about balancing competing priorities, working with others effectively to find a better way and a sustainable future for the island. We can do this by focusing on three priorities: the economy, the environment, and our community. We have an economy that performs well, and I want to see it strengthen into the future. The more successful business is, the more revenue we will raise to provide healthcare, education, and help to those in need. In a world of rapid change, it's essential to adapt to the digital world, boost skills and productivity to remain competitive and successful. We all cherish our beautiful environment and coastline. We also need to protect it, to improve water, air, and soil quality. If we take on this priority, we can reduce traffic congestion on our roads, minimise waste, and still create affordable homes for people and their families. Our community is safe and friendly. This also needs to be protected. I will champion the needs of our elders. Our system can support them well, and we should leave it in good shape for their grandchildren when they come to retire. I embrace diversity and inclusion, and I will seek further improvements to our mental health services so that people receive help before experiencing a crisis in their lives. When making decisions, we need to take all three of these issues into account to deliver a positive result for each and every person. Politics is about people. This is your opportunity, of course, to select your representatives after all. For me, the best part of a campaign is about canvassing. It's a privilege to connect with people on their own doorsteps. This afternoon, I visited a very happy community in Langtree Gardens. I remember well the debate about the site and whether it was right to build on agricultural land. Our farmers are an important part of our life. They provide us with two of our finest ambassadors, the Jersey cow and the raw potato, of course, as well as a successful industry. But people also need homes. Many struggle to get on the housing ladder, and high housing costs can lead to financial hardship and pressure on young families. I respect St Saviour residents for taking the difficult decision that they did. Building those homes has freed up larger houses for families and created an asset for the parish. I'm not arguing that we should build on every field for housing, far from it, but we need sustainable communities. There's a bus stop right outside Lancashire Gardens, for example. The route operates well during the day, but then it stops. So if they continued into the evening, people would choose to leave their cars behind to go out in the evening, easing congestion for everyone. Experience has taught me that islanders want to see brave and clear leadership from experienced and compassionate leaders who can listen and take action based on the facts. A vote for more means you'll get a positive voice for a better future. Thank you.
Mr. Troy, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gordon George Troy, Jersey born in 1954, educated at De La Salle College. I'm passionate about Jersey, it's my island, and I love it. I would appreciate the honour and privilege of serving the people of Jersey as Senator. Politics has been part of my family for as long as I can remember. There's been a Troy or Shenton in the states of Jersey since before I was born, except for the last political term. Moving on to taxation and the way I feel about that. When GST was introduced, it was a pay cut for every Jersey resident. I knew this tax would hit the most vulnerable in our society, the poor, the pensioner, working families with young children, and small struggling businesses. My aim, if elected, will be to keep GST pegged at 5%, and raise tax thresholds so that small income families and pensioners will pay less. I would like to make it clear, I'm totally against increased taxation. I'm passionate as well about helping our senior citizens in our society. The Jersey pensioner has for a long time been politically overlooked. The pension scheme is meant to help people achieve and maintain financial independence. In my opinion, it just falls well short of this. One of my main political aims, if elected, will be to assist pensioners to get better pension benefits, better health care, better housing, designed to meet their needs. Our senior citizens have helped create our island's prosperity. We must do our very best to look after them. I promise I will bring many propositions to improve pensioners' lives. If elected, I want to be the pensioner's friend. I want to be the pensioner's senator. And I want to be the pensioner's minister. Moving on, I would also like to give the island financial services and fintech industries my support. They're the backbone of our economy, producing most of the tax revenue and a high level of employment. Tourism, agriculture and retail, fisheries, building and development would not go without my assistance. They're all very important to Jersey economy and wonderful Jersey way of life. These industries must be supported by our government and have conditions put in place to allow these sectors to flourish without the trappings of excessive red tape. Regarding Brexit, I'm more comfortable with Brexit now that we have the right to negotiate our own bilateral investment treaties. Senator Valois should be congratulated. If elected, I would like to play a significant part in negotiating our trade agreements. We need to guarantee a strong international trade position for Jersey. On the homes front, I would like to see
Thank you very much.
schemes for home ownership. Thank you.
Deputy Mezack.
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. My name is Sam Mezack and I've been the Deputy for St Helier No. 2 for the past 4 years now. I'm standing for election alongside 17 other Reform Jersey candidates, 3 of whom are standing here in St Saviour, 1 in each district, because we want to play a positive and constructive role in the next government of Jersey, with our #1 aim being to improve the standard of living for all islanders. It's time for change. And it's time we had a government which represented the interests of ordinary islanders and was focused on making all of our lives better. Over the last 10 years, the gap between the haves and the have-nots has gotten wider. We're now a more unequal society than the UK, and poverty has drastically risen. We've seen many of our public services deteriorate, whilst millions continue to be wasted by the government. This, in one of the wealthiest societies in the world, is not inevitable. Jersey has the potential to be a beacon for equality, for prosperity, and for environmentalism, if only we had governments with a clear vision of how to get there. So that's why we're standing together in this election as a team committed to this change. If you elect me and other Reform Jersey candidates, we will be an unsilenceable voice for working people to make sure that nobody is left behind by the government, and will aim to raise the standard of living for all of us. It's not right that islanders have seen their earnings flatline for a decade, and support for the vulnerable has been cut, whilst the state has allowed its attention to drift in other directions. Jersey deserves better than this. More has got to be done to raise the incomes of the low paid, which is why we're pledging to raise the minimum wage to £10 an hour by 2022. More must be done to support Jersey's businesses, beyond just providing positive PR and setting up new quangos. That's why we're pledging to reduce Class 2 social security contributions for the self-employed. And our young people deserve to have the best opportunities for a decent and fulfilling career, irrespective of their family's financial circumstances, which is why we're pledging to support higher education funding reform without cutting other areas of the education budget. We've published a full manifesto which can be found on our website, which outlines our 10 key pledges, which we can guarantee we will work on implementing if we're elected. If the people of Jersey offer us the opportunity to play a leading role in the next government of Jersey, we will not let you down. A better Jersey is possible, and we are determined to make it happen. We are a prosperous island, but we must all be able to share in that prosperity so we can each have happy and fulfilling lives. That should be the #1 mission of the States Assembly. So on the 16th of May, I hope you vote for me, Sam Mezack, and your local Reform Jersey candidates. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Mr. Troy to turn his microphone off, please? Thank you very much. That's okay. Deputy Valois.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It was over 9 years ago that the parishioners of Soulaglise St Saviour put their faith and trust in me, not just for one term, but for 2. I want to take this opportunity to thank you and say what an honour it was to serve you during those 6 years. I have waited until this particular hustings to set up one of my main reasons for standing on an island-wide mandate. The purpose for this is the very fact that St Saviour is the hub of education. At the very core of my vision for the island is the need to invest in education, skills and lifelong learning. It's very easy to be drawn into short-term thinking, but the areas I wish to focus on during the next term will attempt to start the ball rolling on some very fundamental issues we currently face, and will merely get worse if we continue just to tinker around the edges. It is vitally important that we revitalise the role of Highlands College and coordinate or even partner with industries to develop and expand skills. Education is not about how to pass a test. It is about providing a toolkit for the rest of our lives. Learning is a constant, not just when we are at school, but in everyday life, and even more so for our rapidly changing world. I would like to do the same thing for teachers as the parishioners of St Saviour did for me. Put my faith and trust in them to do what they do best. In order to achieve this, it will require teamwork. It will require consistent engagement and a willingness to focus on the long-term benefits. At a time of uncertainty for both residents and business, we need a public sector and the political representatives who govern them to listen, lead, and learn with honesty, integrity, and respect. We need to encourage change in behaviour and set out our values right from the start, ensuring we are delivering for the public in a cohesive and modern way. The next Assembly will have to come together to properly address ministerial government to harness a more collaborative and constructive way of working. Our personal tax system needs to address the role of allowances against direct funding, particularly around nursery provision, and take into consideration the wider scope of early years to create a solid partnership with those in the private sector and charitable sector and enable workable solutions for the island. There is a great deal to do. I have the tenacity, drive and willingness to begin the journey, but I cannot do it without you, the people of Jersey. Please consider me for your vote on the 16th of May. Thank you.
And now Mr. Luce, please.
Good evening, Saviour. Thank you for attending this hustings tonight, and thank you for ensuring that your name be on the electoral roll, enabling you to vote. Your vote and how you vote has never been so important. We are facing a landmark election. You are going to shape the future of the next government for all Irelanders. You, the minority, are going to carry the apathetic majority into better government by your choice of candidates before you tonight. Never before has the gap between government and the electorate been greater. Irelanders are so appalled by the antics of the present sitting states members, they have turned their back on politics and have lost total faith and feel angry that their opinions are completely ignored by the elected members once they get into government. Frankly, reading letters to the editor in the Jersey Evening Post should be compulsory reading for all states members. The appalling successive low voting turnout since the war is testimony to the contempt Irelanders have for standing government. This situation can only be reversed by better government made up of members who first and foremost listen to the people and shape their policies to make government inclusive to the electorate. Then and only then will the greater public feel included, in touch, and this will result in a greater desire to vote. In the meantime, and for this most important election, your vote will speak for all Irelanders. Potential voters see the system of government in Jersey as bad. They want nothing to do with it. That was an opinion held by me. However, the present Assembly horrified me to such an extent that I'm now before you asking for your vote, so that I may represent the thoughts, feelings and opinions of Irelanders in the Chamber itself. I want to have a strong and significant input in two long outstanding issues, the hospital saga and the independent inquiry into the lifeboat power and personality struggle the present government does not wish to happen. To face in the new Assembly the looming priorities of Brexit and population control, and ensure that the agriculture and tourism are better supported to form a holy trinity of business sectors along with the finance industry. I want to work for a listening States Chamber that puts Irelanders first. For that I need your confidence and your support and of course your vote. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you, and I hope to meet you and be of service to you for the next momentous 4 years. For your ballot paper, the name is Luce, Frank Luce. Thank you and good evening. Thank you.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The proposed immigration policy is that immigration should not exceed the average of that since 2001, 700 people a year. On that basis, by 2035, we will require 185 La Marre blocks and 6 new primary schools. Where will we house them? We built 1,261 houses over the past 4 years, compared with an actual immigration of 4,200 people over the same period. Andium and the housing trusts are making attempts to provide more housing, but they're being squeezed into the urban areas. We need additional housing sites identified in the 2020 Island Plan on an island-wide basis. We need sites for affordable housing and housing for our older population who want to downsize. There are benefits of fresh ideas being brought into the island, but the strain on the infrastructure caused by uncontrolled immigration is worrying. This contributes to the shortage of housing. The demand is too high. And let us not speak about the problem of the aging population. That's rubbish. Who is looking after the children in the holidays? The grandparents. Who is doing much of the volunteering in the island? The aging population. Who is doing much of the caring in the island? The aging population. That is, when they're not climbing Kilimanjaro, hiking through the Pampas, or trekking across Iceland. It is time we stopped writing them off and paid more attention to the way they are treated. I went to the nurses' meeting last night. One sister told me that a colleague in another discipline at the same grade is now being paid some £10,000 more than her, and the colleague was sworn to secrecy. And they were not to tell the nurses. No wonder the nurses are getting militant. Certainly, they're talking about various actions. And if I was in health management, I don't think I'd want to be ill at the moment. It's unlikely that the hospital planning review will be completed before September. There is time to make a final comparison of the various sites, and this is essential to allay public uncertainty. You will hear many promises during this election. I merely ask you to ask, how much will it cost, and where will that money come from? Please remember, your vote is your voice. Please use it, preferably for Sarah Ferguson, but you must use it. Please come out and vote. Thank you.
Senator Farnum, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In 2014, I was appointed Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. And since then, I have worked on behalf of all islanders to deliver strong, sustainable growth across all sectors of our economy. Maintaining a strong economy is important not only because it provides jobs and career opportunities, but also creates the wealth required to help those in our community who find themselves in need and allow society to develop for the benefit of everyone. This evening I would like to talk briefly about the provision of affordable housing. And whilst there has been progress since 2014, with the delivery by Andium of 258 new homes, with more on the way, and the acquisition of new sites capable of delivering up to almost 1,000 new homes, together with some innovative parish schemes in the pipeline, and in addition, the private sector is also delivering about 300 new homes a year. But it's not enough. And this simply must be a key priority. In fact, it must be a key target for the next States Assembly, to increase the supply of homes at least in line with demand if we are to make any progress at all. The stumbling block for so many young people aspiring to home ownership is raising the deposit. So in addition to addressing the demand, there must be greater efforts made to introduce more help to buy schemes. And these should include deposit loans, shared equity, and even equity release opportunities. But we must also explore new construction methods with new materials aimed at driving down prices and improving environmental standards and the running costs of your home. There are currently at least 1,000 households in the rental sectors looking to purchase affordable homes. If we can help to facilitate this and release housing stock in the rental sectors, then we create a more consistent supply of housing, which should stabilise pricing and improve standards across all categories of housing. The government has just commissioned the Future Housing Needs Report, which will be published this summer, and will inform us of housing needs up to 2030. So we will have some good information to work with, and this will be a key priority for me if I am elected. Ladies and gentlemen, Jersey is in good shape, with strong foundations, but we need to keep it that way. And to do that, we will need to elect people, serious people, with positive vision, highly experienced people, with a good track record, who are committed to attaining that goal for the benefit of all islanders. And I ask you please to bear that in mind when casting your votes on May the 16th. Thank you.
Constable Pallet, please.
Good evening, St Saviour's. I'm Constable Sunbrella. I'm also Assistant Minister with responsibility for sport and all their sports facilities in the island. And I'm a former St Saviour's resident as well. I spent my 10 years, from 10 to 20 growing up in St Saviour's in the days when you could build your own home on a state's loan at Clopamel. And it's just a shame we can't still do that. I want to talk about our children. Children are I don't think anybody here would disagree that the children are our future. And as such, in the same way that we legislate that a person must wear a seatbelt, I think we should legislate so that all children must have sport exercise for at least 1 hour during the school day, every day. Why? Because they're our future leaders, they're our future workforce, and something I'm interested in, they're also going to be our future sports stars. Now, why? And how are we going to do that? I've been very keen to see a physical literacy program in the island, and we've developed that. But what does physical literacy mean? Is it just about making children fitter? No, it's not. It's about delivering those core movement skills that they need at an early age. If we don't give them those skills at an early age, they'll never reach their potential. We'll never have another Serena Guthrie. We'll never have another Graham Lasso, because they won't reach their physical potentials. But it's not just about that. It is also about making them enjoy school. Now, why is exercise important in school? Actually, it improves their concentration. It improves their attention span. Actually makes them sleep better because it tires them out. Makes them less sedentary. Makes them cope better with life. But most importantly, it improves their learning. So I think we really need to concentrate on having a program that's going to deliver that. And I'm going to do that with our Active Jersey strategy, not just for young people, but also for the rest of the island. That's something that I'm very passionate about, and I know other candidates. I know Tracy's very keen to see us improve our education system, but it's something that we need to put into the education system. Very recently, with Christina, I met a lady called Elaine Wiley, who's introduced the Daily Mile in Scotland. What an inspirational person. And it's not just about running kids around a school field, it's about them socialising, and it's about them enjoying life, and it's about making life much more enjoyable for them at school. Health's a ticking time bomb in Jersey. I think we need to be really careful where we go. This is why I want to deliver Active Jersey. I've got the energy to do it. I think I've shown the leadership skills, and I've got the experience. Thank you.
Deputy Lefondre, please.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Lefondre. I've had the privilege of representing St Lawrence as deputy for the past 12.5 years, but now I'm seeking your support, as are many of us, to receive an island mandate. I'm delighted to be in Saviour's tonight, and in particular, I'd like to commend the 16 hours of time by your honorary police on Monday. And for me, the honorary police and also the voluntary sector are part of the DNA of this island, as is the parish system, and long may that continue. I've been honorary secretary of Valois Housing Trust for over 20 years. The trust actually commenced as a solution to the terrible issues in this parish that were facing the residents of Troy Court back in 1989. And I'm delighted not only have we repaid the original loan, we've now started its £12 million Phase 1 redevelopment, which starts the cycle anew. So that's better accommodation for residents on a brownfield site. Professionally, I'm a chartered accountant, which is very useful when dealing with expensive states projects, large sums of expenditure, and complex legislation. We're representing the island more on the international basis than we used to. For example, I work on l'Assemblée parlementaire de la Francophonie, and I'm also the Jersey representative on the British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly. And in the context of Brexit and ultimately our economy, it is vital that we promote Jersey to overseas politicians, explaining why we are of benefit to the UK and about our very unique position with Europe. As President of Scrutiny and Chairman of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, it's been a hard job holding ministers to account over the past 3.5 years. One of the consistent themes is the poor level of communication and consultation with various parts of the community. This is something that should not be hard to do in a small island, and which I commit to addressing and improving. And I was saddened following the huge meeting which I also attended at the Town Hall last night to hear how our valued nurses appear to have been treated. It cannot be right that one pay group is told to keep their pay award secret from another. And I'm hugely passionate about the proper implementation of public sector reform, of finally getting rid of the silo mentality. It will save us millions of pounds, but we need to be clear as to how it is being implemented. In my leaflet, I refer to the need for change in the way we do things and in our organisational culture. Communication needs to be genuine and sincere. Jersey is a fantastic place to live. I mean, look at the evening we've got tonight, but we do have challenges as well as opportunities ahead. And I hope I've clearly demonstrated that as an accountant, my approach is considered, it's thoughtful, and I look at the long term. I'm prepared to listen, and I'll work hard to get to a solution. At this time, we need proven political experience, and I hope you will consider I can provide that and consider me for one of your votes for Senator. Thank you.
Mr. Ocean.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be remain sitting for the simple reason that if I stand, you can hear me, but I can't hear myself. I'm too far away from the microphone at 6'2". First of all, I'm not going to elaborate on my manifesto. I did list my concerns down there. In fact, in the early hours of the morning the other day, I've actually expanded on it. It will not fit into the booklet that's going to go out island-wide. It's about 1,000 words. But I'm going to hopefully have it across my feeds on social media very, very shortly. But it's on LinkedIn at the moment if you are on LinkedIn. So what am I going to talk about? You know that I sat here in 2016 in the by-election, and I did intend to do certain things. And I have achieved certain things. I did turn around and say that I was going to get in touch with Google in America, which I did. I had a 2-day argument with them, and they saw my way of thinking. And that's not easy with Americans, I can assure you. So I had the letters the UK removed from the 5 islands, our 5 islands, and they now recognise that Jersey is not part of the UK. I intend to do this with LinkedIn, I'm already started, and also Twitter and also YouTube. This is important, we've got a unique identity here, and it's going to be maintained in that respect. I've already got my American followers that have already started a petition, that in fact yesterday, to actually get this going and the momentum behind it. So what have I achieved? I've achieved that. I've also achieved history as the first person outside the States Assembly to have the law changed. Back in 2016, there was confusion over my name. I'm not Peter Mac. Far from it. In fact, it's a completely different situation with myself and Peter Mac. And it caused confusion. I lost votes over it, and there was a lot of problems. So a member of government helped me, took this to the law officers, and the law has been changed. You will notice on the ballot paper now that it will now read Ocean Stevie, as it should, so there won't be any confusion there. And in brackets, it will have my birth name as an afterthought. I'm a man of action. I don't make pledges and I don't make promises, but I do achieve things. So if you really want to get things done, vote for Stevie Ocean or Ocean Stevie on May the 16th, or pre-vote at St Paul's from the 30th of April to the 14th of May. Thank you very much.
And now Mr. McGuire, please.
Good evening. I'm here tonight because I'm sick and tired of our government breaking the very laws that it's here to support and protect. Let me give you an example with a resident of this parish. 2 years ago, a grandmother went to work at the Zami as usual. However, that day, the chair collapsed underneath her, she fell back, hurt her back. From that day to this, she hasn't been able to work because she's in constant pain. The injury, in fact, may be permanent. So what did the Zami do about it? Well, they immediately reduced her wages down to £17 a month and have recently terminated her contract because she's now too ill to work. So how many laws have been broken at this point? Well, There's health and safety in that they have defective equipment and hadn't noticed and hadn't done anything about it. They've broken the law over the fact that they haven't done a management review to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again. There's also, I'm told, employment laws that have been broken here because they've fired somebody in the middle of an injury dispute. And of course, there's also discrimination in that this woman who is now technically disabled is not being acknowledged as disabled. She's been called ill by a disability charity. So what's happened? Nothing. Health and safety haven't investigated. They haven't even gone down to the place and checked the other chairs to make sure they're safe. What about the charity commissioner? Surely keeping the charities obeying the law is his domain. Surely he's done something about it. After all, we're paying £1 million a year for the benefit of having one. No. Has the parish done anything about it, seeing as it happened within their boundaries? No. We have a simple case here where an awful lot of people who are paid an awful lot of money to do a job are not doing it. Now, the thing that makes me angry about this is the fact that if this little old lady was mugged and robbed in the streets, it would be on the front page of the JP and there would be a public outcry, quite rightly. But because it happens by a charity, behind closed doors, no one's interested, not even the people who are supposed to be. So I'd like to leave you with just 2 questions. The first is, how many other people are in exactly the same situation, living with pain and injury, and not receiving the care that they deserve, and that the law tells them that they deserve? And the second thing I'd like to know is, how have we come to this point where this kind of thing is even allowed?
Now, Mr. Rizzoli.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like you to listen carefully, please. Our ministerial government does not work. Half of the representation is ineffective because power is centralised and it has resulted in lost basic principles, which in turn has delivered poor and flawed legislation. We have come to expect too little from government and too little from life. Our lives should be exceptional. Government today has an insatiable appetite for money. I will put a stop to this. We need an accountable government. I can deliver this by preparing legislation for detailed financial accountability. This is important because the detail of spending is what our government is doing and not what they say they're doing, and the waste is colossal. I will put a stop to this. It's not the government's job to create wealth. That's your job. The economy belongs to working people and businesses to create. Government must set the rules, however, in doing so, must take care not to inhibit the latter. Freedom for large and small businesses is imperative. It should never be the responsibility of business to pay for welfare. That is government responsibility. It must always be funded by collective taxation. Business has a huge responsibility in providing jobs and services. Anything that impedes the latter will always be counterproductive. Secondly, we need our skilled and unskilled manual workers. No one section of society is more important than another. How, on one hand, can a government give help to those in need, paying everything from their rent, food, clothing, and the like, and then not to provide affordable homes for those that work hard, pay their taxes to fund that welfare? It makes no sense at all. Homes must be affordable for those on lower incomes. Therefore, state housing rents must reflect this reality. State rentals should fall by 40%, and I will work hard to deliver this if I'm elected. To all those in government that have stood down, we thank you. However, it's my belief that we need new ideas. I will change how states members are elected. I can make large contributions to education and health, by better understanding of principles. I want Jersey to be the envy of the international circuit for the very best reasons. Tourism will be replenished. We welcome to a new world where people truly come first and the economy is in service to that end. Thank you.
And now Deputy Bree.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Simon Bree. I am proud to be a Jerseyman and honoured to be a Deputy for St Clement. I am a chairman of a number of scrutiny panels and have been working hard on your behalf to hold this government to account. There are major issues facing our island, which will have a direct impact on the daily lives of every one of us. Unless we tackle these now, our way of life and our island will change forever. Brexit is looming with its unknown impact on our economy. We need to diversify our economy and support small businesses and sole traders so as not to be so reliant on the finance industry. The population growth over the last few years, if left unchecked and uncontrolled, will have serious consequences on our quality of life. St Saviour, along with St Helier and St Clement, has suffered from overdevelopment, putting huge pressures on the parish infrastructure. This needs to be stopped. I'm against wholesale development of greenfield sites, but fully support parishes in delivering small-scale, affordable homes for the parishioners. Much sooner these than large blocks of concrete and steel. That we have unseen poverty on this island is something that should shame all of us. We need to reduce the financial burden placed on middle to low-income families by reducing the cost and size of the public sector. This does not mean reducing services, and simply raising taxes is not the answer. Removal of GST on food and children's clothing would be a step in the right direction. Government must stop wasting money. £26 million spent on a new hospital without a spade being put in the ground. £800,000 on an aircraft registry and only one aircraft to show for it. Countless millions spent on UK consultants with more spend just announced by the Chief Executive. Do we really need UK consultants to tell us how to run our own island? Politics in Jersey has become polarised. Let us regain the middle ground. Let us have a government that has a social responsibility and is not just some uncaring, soulless corporate entity. This election is a real opportunity for change. It is time for your voice to be heard. Your vote is your voice. If you vote for me, I will listen to your voice. I will represent you. I have the political experience, demonstrable work ethic, and courage to stand up for what I believe in. Working together, we can make a real, positive difference to the lives of every member of our society. I would be honoured to receive your vote. Thank you.
Now, Senator Gorse, please.
Monsieur le Procureur, ladies and gentlemen, I stood for elected office to make a difference and to provide hope for the future. This election is about change. As Chief Minister, I have guided our island through some of the most difficult economic and social challenges we have faced. But over the next 4 years, we face challenges that will set the future course, set our future course as a community for the years to come. The uncertainty of Brexit, international uncertainty, and the uncertainty of the EU. We have also suffered the effects of the global financial crisis, and I understand the effect that the Great Recession had on family budgets. Jersey is a great place. We have made significant progress across the community, but I'm not satisfied. There is more that I want to see achieved. I have 3 main aims. Firstly, effective economic leadership. That means protecting and building on the many good things that we find in island life, so supporting the businesses that are already here and encouraging development and diversification. Our economic strength has not happened by accident. I will continue to represent Jersey's economy and way of life on the international stage, defending our reputation in the EU and elsewhere, promoting investment and trade. I want, and have always wanted, to ensure that all islanders can share in this success. And that's why my second aim is improving the lives of islanders by building on what we have achieved so far. But I want to do more. That's why I'm proposing an Affordable Housing Commission, a coming together of the community to drive out costs and increase supply, a refocusing of the competition regulator, driving down the cost of living, a building on the long-term care scheme, providing government support for older islanders at parish level. And post the care inquiry, I'm proposing a new contract with children and young people. Thirdly, to transform government and the public sector. We have started to reform government, but there is more to do, driving out waste and focusing the whole of government on serving islanders. When we work together, we can achieve change and a better way. I stand for hope for the future, so that you don't risk yours. I would appreciate one of your votes on the 16th of May. Thank you.
And finally, Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Monsieur Eola Proctor, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I have leaflets, I have an online manifesto that explains what I am intending to do if elected by you. And what I would like to focus on right now is to explain why am I standing. I'm a fresh face, and a lot of people are saying maybe we need fresh faces in this States Assembly because maybe there's some members who have been working with a dysfunctional government, a government that's actually been identified as dysfunctional. And there is a problem when you've been working in a system. There's a danger that you become part of it. Maybe you need some people who come fresh from the outside and can actually say, yeah, I can actually see how you can get better and how you can improve. Yes, I'm a fresh face, and I'm not a reform candidate either. I'm independent. I have a different background, and I believe it's one that's very relevant to the work of a states member. You have to look at accounts. You have to, hopefully, because I believe not everybody can quite do this, I believe you shouldn't be over-reliant on the civil service, particularly one that's been identified as dysfunctional. You have to look at laws, and you shouldn't be over-reliant on law draftsmen either. So I'm good value for money. I'm an Oxford graduate, I'm an ex-tax lawyer, I'm a former partner of a local law firm, and guess what? I'm also a trainer in leadership, and I think we could do a bit more of that in the States Assembly, because we've had a divisive culture. We've had scrutiny treated like opposition. They actually are there to make good points. I've seen people from all in here. Reform may not always be everybody's cup of tea. I've actually seen them make good points and been dismissed. And I don't believe that's teamwork. I don't believe that's leadership. I would like to see the whole States Assembly working for you as a team. And I believe that if you elect me, I can help do that. I can help be that part of that team. And I wish to also support a strong economy, and I know what that is. Part of the reason why I'm standing was also because of my experiences as the chairman of the St. Brellard's Bay Association, in which I learned that we have a dysfunctional island plan. It's when I realised this island plan doesn't just serve this little community that I've been representing, because our current system is dysfunctional, the parish representatives are doing something else, but it doesn't serve you either. So please consider me, please, for one of your votes. I'm here to work for all of you. That's why I'm standing for senator. I want to do what's best for the island. So please vote for the change we need.
Thank you very much. Well, may I firstly congratulate all the candidates on sticking to the time limit. I think the longest overspill was the time it took me to press my button. So thank you all very much. Now we come to questions, and I have been provided with a standard script. There will be 2 microphones in the hall, and I will call on the person to answer the question first, and it will go around until it gets back to them. They won't have a second bite at the cherry, though. So I'm going to take the first 2 questions, and the candidates will tell me, do they get 2 minutes to answer both questions?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Thank you. So, questions from the floor. I don't know where the microphones are. Okay. A gentleman there, and a gentleman here. With a beret. The first question, stand up and let us have your name, please.
My name's Michael Officer. I'm a St Saviour's resident. What I'd like to ask is one which I think might be a useful barometer for all the candidates.
Okay,
to show
just
where they
ask
stand.
the question, please.
Where do the candidates stand on the proposed spend of approximately £500 million when we have options available at lower cost and less disruption?
Okay. Hospital. Yeah. Well, I don't think it means. Thank you. And then the second question, please.
My name is Rob Averty, and I would like to know, how do the candidates relate personally to the Christian gospel, and do they think it is something to be considered when making decisions in the State's Assembly?
Right, we'll start with Tracy Valois.
That was a shock. Okay, thank you.
That gave her a shock, didn't it?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Officer, with regards to the £500 million, I'm assuming you're talking about the hospital. This has been going in round and roundabouts. I remember I was Assistant Minister at Treasury, and the original options that were on the table, which had the highest weighting, was the waterfront and Overdale. The decision was not made, and it all went back to the drawing board and kept on going over again. In terms of where we are now, I mean, the Constable of St John's tried to take a proposition to review it, that got thrown out. So depending on well, the Plan A application's in as well, so depending on how we go after the elections and who's in the Assembly, my particular view is that I think we've got some serious issues around the funding elements, and it needs to be addressed. And I think in terms of the current site, if we cannot get a decision about the appropriate site sooner, then we'll have to stick with the current site, and that's my position at this precise moment. And with regards to Mr. Averty, regards to Christian gospel, I personally relate to you treat others as you expect to be treated, and that's how I personally relate to the Christian gospel, and that's how I treat people exactly how I expect them to treat me. And that's the answer. Thank you.
Mr. Luce, please. Just, if you can just keep on answering and going round to the left all the way till you get to the top here and you go round to the right.
Right, Michael. The hospital, an absolute bloody disaster. We're going to put the island into great debt building the hospital in the wrong place. What we need is a flat, level, virgin site, and we can do it for half the price. As simple as that. And the insistence of the past senator to stick to the hospital site, come what may, is an absolute disgrace. I've got a strong, strong feeling about the hospital. It should be sorted out And if I get into the States, I will make every effort to make sure that it's nowhere near Gloucester Street. Okay? As far as you're concerned, Rod, yes, Christian values, i.e. no cynicism, no cliques, political agendas, treat people, as Tracy says, the way you would wish to be treated yourself, and treat people fairly and expect people to treat you fairly. And I agree with you completely. There should be more moral backbone in the States Assembly.
Right, where do I stand on the hospital? Well, by the time we've paid everything back, we've paid the best part of £1 billion. Well, we've got to pay back capital and interest. But don't forget the additional 45 million for mental health at Overdale. There's the cost of Lekeneve School, 42 million being spent at the airport. You know, we've got a lot of capital expenditure and we need to sit and review it. You know, is it nice to have or is it essential? You know, if we're busy building wonderful hospitals and we're neglecting the nurses and deceiving them, is that really helpful? Now, Mr. Averti, actually, we live in a culture which is based on a Judeo-Christian culture, and our moral setup is based, I think, probably on the Ten Commandments and probably the Sermon on the Mount. I'm actually a Methodist. I'm actually a director of the Biarritz Hotel too, so we're very practical, we Methodists. In fact, I'm told that Methodists invented trade unions. But anyway, no, I think, you know, we have a culture based on those premises, those values, and I think, you know, it's worked well for us, and I think we should continue.
Thank you. I had always envisaged that the hospital would be built out of town, but after having studied carefully the plans, I believe that having a hospital within the Ring Road in St Helier is sensible and practical for logistical reasons. If we can find a flat version site to build it on and save money, even better. But for me, the most important thing with the hospital is making sure the building itself is right, the inside. Because the capital cost is about 3% of the total cost of running the health service for the next 30 to 40 years. We're going to invest as taxpayers somewhere between 10 and 15 billion pounds excuse me, in running the health service. So for me, we should start focusing on that. That's a real investment, and we need to use that money to make sure we get the best personnel, the best doctors, the best nurses, pay them well, the best technology, and the best equipment. The Christian gospel does not play a big part in my life, if I'm honest. But I'm not an atheist, I'm not even agnostic, and I am Christian. And I believe in that religion plays an important part in a modern and civilized society, and I support it. And like others, I like to treat people with respect and treat people as I would expect to be treated myself. Thank you.
Right, we start with Miss Scott on the top here. We go round. It's a magic roundabout.
Thank you, Mr. Answer. The hospital. Well, this is a project that was spectacularly mismanaged, which I've spoken to practitioners and other people about this. It's not actually based on any clear health strategy that we understand. What will health be? What's going to be inside that hospital? And it involves a level of financing that, if it's mismanaged, could bankrupt the island. So I haven't felt entirely comfortable with the way things were done, I have to admit. But I still don't feel I know the full facts. So I've actually intended, if I'm elected, just to pursue them. Because if I feel, yes, you should have a review, I will insist on having that review. But I really do need to uncover more before I can really go down that route. And Mr. Rafferty, how do I relate to the Christian gospel? I was brought up in a Christian school. And that Christian bit, I'm actually quite into that. I'm not into the old gospel that perhaps says you should burn witches and not support gay marriage or anything like that to the extent that people interpret it that way, because I believe in that Christian bit that you should love everybody, that you should actually respect everybody as being a part of an amazing thing called life, called humanity. That's my Christianity approach.
Thank you very much for the question about the hospital. Senator Farnum said rightly that we spend every year on healthcare over £200 million. So, of course, £500 million is a lot of money. But in the context of the actual amount we're going to spend every year on people's healthcare, we need to put it into that context. The $466 billion is the overall project cost. The actual build cost is around $270 million. Then you've got inflation, then you've got all of these technical provisions to make sure you manage that process. There is an application currently in. I am of the view that we should allow the planning inspector to make the decision on that site. The hospital needs to be in the basin of St Helier, and there is no absolutely ideal site. If we don't go with where we currently are, it will start costing more and it will take longer. And we need a new hospital to provide the health care that all islanders deserve. Mr Averti, Senator Ferguson is right. In this island, we have a Judeo-Christian heritage. We should be proud of that. We shouldn't be embarrassed by it. I am a person of Christian faith, but when I am acting on behalf of the government, I have to put all of islanders' views and make what I think is the best decision for Jersey. I've always done that. You cannot ask me to do anything else, because unity and working together is really important. For me, the primary command is love God and love everyone else as yourself. And if we do that, we won't go far wrong as a community.
First of all, as Senator Ferguson alluded to, the actual spend that's proposed for the new hospital is closer to £800 million, because we have to pay interest on the bond that we take out. So this figure of 500 is actually nonsensical. Where do I stand on it? I was one of only 3 members of the States who voted against the site in 2016. I am the only one of those 3 in this room at this moment in time. I voted against it again in 2017 when the Council of Ministers brought forward the preferred scheme. And I still believe it's in the wrong place. I still will stand by my convictions and go, no, I do not agree with it. I may be a lone voice, but I am standing by that. We spent £26 million so far. What have we got for it? Absolutely nothing. With regards to Christian values and the Christian teachings of the Christian gospel, all I will say was I was brought up in a Christian family, and it was instilled in me from a very young child that the important things, how you treat other people, are fairness, respect, and love. Those are the values that I continue to live by today. Thank you.
I'll take the hospital first. My background is in construction, hospitals, oil refining, installations, factory installation, heavy industrial commercial. When someone said they were going to rebuild the hospital on the same site, I thought, oh my God, that's the worst thing you could do from a very practical point of view. And 500 million, I don't believe that figure. It's not likely to stay at that figure. If I was addressing the problem, I would have looked for a greenfield site. Enough room for everything. That's what I would have done. Moving on to the religious, it's actually quite an interesting question, but human behavior, politics, psychology is something that I've studied for 25 years, believe it or not. So to explain the religions is quite a tricky one, but I'll leave you with a little thing. A belief and faith are actually two different things. When you have faith, when you're talking from a religious point of view, you're talking about God. You're talking about life. Faith is a belief in God, a belief in life. It actually needs no explanation. That's faith. You just believe in God. Now, a belief system, of course, is where the problem lies. A belief system is everyone's version of what God is. And yet God, there's only one. Believe in life, believe in God will deliver for you. Ask, and it's given. That's it.
I really don't know where to begin with the hospital. For those of you who have good memories, you may remember that I actually stood in the by-election 8 years ago, and that was the first time this was mentioned. It was only 300 million then. Only 300 million. 8 years later, the only thing that's changed is that the prices got higher. And I've been to a number of meetings with officials on this matter, and I've asked a very simple question and got no reply, which is, will it actually improve anything? Will it reduce waiting lists of particular operations? Will we actually get anything for all this money once it's spent? And all I get is embarrassed silence. The question for me is it just another posh building to put somebody's name on? Or is it actually going to deliver anything to us that we don't already have? As far as the Christian gospel is concerned, I believe in two things I think are core to anybody who wishes to be up here. One is that all lives matter and matter equally, and that there's no such thing as a person who has a lesser life. And that I think we should all realize that we have to answer to our higher authority, and we use that as our standard for our lifestyles.
Right, on this old chestnut the hospital, my original site was the waterfront. Now, why didn't it go down on the waterfront? Because the land down there is worth a fortune, and property developers would lose money. So, where do we stand? I would like phase 2 to go up onto Saviour's Hospital, out the way to stop the chaos that would ensue on Kensington Place. Bearing in mind, there are businesses on Kensington Place, there are restaurants as well, and there are people that live there. Where are they going to go? I haven't heard anybody mention that at all. So where do we put them, in the street? That's the first thing. Secondly, on the point of religion, now, what you may not know is I'm a non-practicing Jew. I've been in a synagogue once in my life, and that's when we filmed Bergerac. I've never, ever been bar mitzvahed, and you start this at the age of 8, and basically the rabbi turned around to my late mother and said, Mrs. Levy doesn't want to know, what am I going to do? And that was the end of it. As far as I'm concerned, I treat people with respect, and I expect the same respect back from them. That's about it. Thank you very much.
As far as the hospital, Mr. Officer, I do support a new hospital, just as a principle. It's the biggest capital project ever, we know that, but the whole process to date has been a fiasco, I'm sorry, as far as the public are concerned. In my view, it's been political dogma that's blighted the project, that's cost us millions. I originally was site neutral, and the technical appraisals that came back said the waterfront was £20 million cheaper. The cost differential has changed. The costs have gone up by £5 million. Yes, they're within budget, but that's the base data. And every figure I quote pretty well doubles when you bring finance costs in. So if it's 20 million, 25 million, that becomes 40 to 50 million different. So, and for me, when I get the whole point about what we spend on the hospital and the sheer size of the budget, but when does 20 to 25 million pounds become unimportant? That, to me, is when we've lost our perspective. That's kind of a significant contribution to the cost of building Le Kennevet School. And that's the kind of way I look at it, really. Just for the record, I wasn't present for the vote on the hospital. We had a bereavement in the family, and the funeral was on that day. I would have been with Deputy Bree at that point. And I suppose, so in summary, what I would have liked to have seen is a fair like-for-like cost comparison and see what the results are for the four options that were around. We've never really had that. The planning application doesn't actually start till September, so I did go with Chris Taylor. I thought we had time. So for me, I'm concerned about the costs, impact on patients, staff during demolition, and the level of debt. Mr. Verti, very quickly, our society is founded on Christian values. Moral backbone is important. We need to make decisions that are best for the island. I am a member of the Church of England, and it's about being inclusive, but respecting the rights of minorities and preserving the freedom of speech. So for me, ethics are incredibly important, backbone and integrity. Thank you.
I think the time taken with the hospital has been totally unacceptable. In terms of the delay, I can't understand how we got to a decision where we even considered People's Park. In terms of I think the consultation, I think the public have been treated with total disdain. It was good with Kennevet School. I think the process that they followed with that was good, but I think in terms of the hospital, it's been poor. There's been poor communication, I have to say, with council and ministers in regards to this and how they put the hospital case across. In terms of the cost to date, the £30 million, I don't want to see any more of that money. I don't want to see that money wasted, but I don't see any point in wasting any more money on reviews. We've made a decision now. I think we've decided on the site, the state's decided on a site, we've decided on the funding, and frankly, I think we just need to move on now and build as quickly as we can. In terms of Christian gospel, I do attend church. I can't say I'm overly religious, but there's certainly a place to consider Christian values within the assembly. As other people have already said, I think you need to treat people fairly, but you certainly should not discriminate against any group when you're discussing propositions within the states. I think it's really important that the Dean's there. I think he does give a voice of reason at times. One thing that I think he doesn't do, though, or that's something we need to consider, is that he's a spokesperson for one faith, not all faiths. And I think sometimes we need to consider in future whether we should consider whether other faiths have a say when we come to discuss issues of conscience. I think that's a really important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ocean asked where the Kensington Place residents are going to go. Well, it's probably where the rest of us are going to go if this drags on much longer, into the hospital suffering from stress. Now, half a billion, I forecast by the time it ends, it'll be probably closer to 1 billion. Incidentally, the cost of the most expensive hotel in Dubai. As St John Deputy once said, Jersey is in the habit of paying Rolls-Royce prices and getting a Ford Escort. I think we're going down that road again. It's also, I believe, ironic that ministerial government was sold to us on the promise that it would give us quicker decisions and save money. Well, if this is an example, God help us. And talking about God, Mr. Averti's question, how do I relate to the Christian gospel and its values? Well, I hope I live a Christian life. I do try to treat people as I would wish them to treat me.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Officer. We all know that at the end of Kensington Place, an enormous building has been finished in the last few years, and that wasn't something that brought the whole of the town area to a halt. So I feel quite confident that there will not be a major disruption during the build time of the hospital. There's also modern building practices that we will benefit from in terms that will help to keep the process quiet as it can be, and as efficient as it can be also. If anybody has taken notice of the two buildings that have gone up recently on the International Finance Centre, they have also been relatively quiet in their production, and so minimisation of disruption to the public will be obviously one of the most important factors of building this. But we have been thinking about this hospital build since 2013, when I was on the scrutiny panel looking at it. We have now made a decision, and it's important that we continue to build this hospital. It's an important facility for islanders to benefit for their health, which is, of course, one of the most important things to us all. All I know about delay is that it actually costs in poor service to the public. If you look at the many years that we spent arguing about where the police station was to go, actually, the people who've lost out there are the people who will one day live on the Summerland site. We know we have a need for affordable homes, and those people could actually be living on the Summerland site by now if we hadn't spent so much time arguing. On faith, I'm a Christian, and I value the Lord's Prayer at the beginning of every assembly, and I think it centres us all and reminds us that we're there to observe forgiveness and respect. Thank you.
The hospital. Yes, it has been a saga. The facts are, though, that we've got an ageing population. And as one that's starting to get old myself, I'm going to start falling apart at some time. So I'm going to need some operations. And there's many of us that'll be like that. So we need a state-of-the-art hospital very quickly, because there's going to be a lot of illness. Our population has got a demographic where it's bloating out with older generations. So I'm surprised to hear one of the previous statesmen members say that he's not happy with the hospital site. The hospital site has been democratically chosen by the States of Jersey Chambers, and therefore it's a decision. It should just proceed as soon as possible, as long as it's got the correct planning situation, which is one point I do have a bit of a beef on, and that's retaining the fascia of the old building. I think just ruins the planning opportunities for a state-of-the-art hospital, and I think that should just come down and not be maintained. Well, that's what I think. And as for the Christian values, I'm Christian educated, and I believe that there's a lack of Christian values from the States, and they should put a little bit more Christian value into Christmas celebrations for the aged in our island. Thank you.
Mr. Officer, you don't need me to tell you that the process in getting to this point with the hospital has, of course, been a complete shambles. It's taken 5 years and £26 million to be told that apparently the best place for the hospital is where it currently is. I think that this is actually a symptom of a broken political system where accountability doesn't feature in it. You look at jurisdictions around the world, and many governments manage to grapple with these sorts of issues much easier than we do and at much lower cost. So I think really the problem here is the system. Reform Jersey's position has always been that we favoured a site in town, clean site. The waterfront was always viable, would have been much cheaper and could have been done much quicker. And ideally we'd still support that, but I think that the boat has probably sailed on that one. And if it is going to be built on the current site, we need to consult with the people who work in the hospital, because up until this point, they have not been treated with the seriousness and the respect that they deserve. Mr. Averti, on the Christian gospel, I was actually baptised across the road in St Saviour's Church, but I now consider myself to be a half Catholic, half Anglican atheist. I went to St Saviour's Primary School, and I was brought up on stories of Jesus Christ. I was taught about a man who told us to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. The Sermon on the Mount, he said the meek would inherit the earth, and he said, sooner will a camel pass through a needle's eye than a rich man enter the kingdom of God. Jesus Christ preached justice and he preached peace, and he stood with the poor and the marginalised, and for that he was persecuted and eventually murdered, but he did it anyway. I don't think you need to be religious to be inspired by the example that he set, and if more people were inspired by that example, then I think the world would be a much nicer place.
And now we come, there's a question here. There's a lady in the front here, and that was the first hand up on the right.
Hello, I'm Maureen Morgan. I live in Soulaglise in this parish. In the last term, Monty Tadier brought propositions to the states to remove the requirement for candidates to be British citizens, which failed both times. Will the candidates tell us where they were born, please? And if not in Jersey or Britain, then when they were naturalised?
And there's one over there.
Thank you. Dave Crocker and I live just up Jardin Pommier. I've got 3 pages of questions, but...
you may have one short one.
Just a short one. Jersey's travelling infrastructure, Condor, has been woeful and disgraceful. It's had 45 years to get its act together. Now, the company's up for sale in 2 years' time. Can I ask the candidates what they propose to do about this? And please answer this question honestly. Do you think that you will support buying Condor? I really would like a yes-no answer to that one. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, in this case, I pounced on a current member of the States, and I'm going to ask a person who is not currently a member of the States to start it off. And if I get somebody quickly, I'll allow it to go. If not, I'll nominate somebody. Very good.
Me?
Mr. Ocean, nobody stood up.
Right, citizenship. I was born in London, in Dalston, in fact, which is East London, which is the most dangerous place in the world now. And ironically, in the German hospital on the 5th of February, 1955, which makes me 63 and not 60 as the JEP put in on Monday. And I've been up there today to reprimand them as well. Now, on buying Condor, as far as I'm concerned, the actual crafts can be scrapped. Let's have our own crafts and start from scratch, because all the previous crafts that we had that were from Condor were fine. This one was actually in Tasmania for 9 months. Why? Why was it standing there for 9 months and waiting for the politicians over here to decide what they were going to do? And unfortunately, they look at it from this point of view, that we have mug written on our forehead. We pay 50 million for a boat that is absolutely useless and could have destroyed our tourism industry. Thank you very much.
Oops. In relation to Mr. Crocker's question, government doesn't run commercial enterprises well. So I would have to be really convinced it was a strategic decision and there's no alternative. So I think that's as far as I can go. Where was I born? Jersey. I'm proud of it.
I supported Deputy Todier's proposition. I was born in Jersey, quite proud to be a Jerseyman. In regards to Condor, I agree with Deputy Fondre. I don't think government should be running businesses like that. I think Aureli and Guernsey just shows that how difficult it can be and how costly it can be to government. I think there are things we could do. I think we can renegotiate the contract. I think we can get a better deal out of them, but it will be expensive. What we want out of it is a better service, a regular service, something that we can trust. I've travelled on it, and when it runs well, it runs really well. But when it's let you down, well, it is terrible. We could renegotiate. We could also go back out to tender, but I'm not sure there's that many companies that would be looking to run that service. I think the northbound route maybe isn't particularly attractive. The southbound route slightly different, but no, I don't think we should be running or even considering buying Condor. That's not for government to do.
Down below to Mr. Baudin, please.
Thank you. I was born in St Clement, and I still live in the house where I was born. Regarding Condor, I did advise Senator McLean when he was a minister in charge of this not to sign the new contract with Condor if they bought the Australian Trimaran. It had been lying around for 4 years. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't even lease it out. It's an unsuitable boat for that particular journey. It seems to me that the logical thing to do, talking about buying Condor, would be for the states to actually buy Condor, but obviously not to run it. I mean, we're not doing too well with the hospital. And lease out the management to competent people. That could be a tender on a service level agreement. But getting back to that unfortunate boat that Condor did buy, of course they really had no option but to buy it because the company that owns them owned the company that built the boat.
Thank you for the questions. I am a British citizen. I was born in Devon on a dairy farm. I have supported Deputy Tadier in his motions to allow non-British citizens to stand for election in the island, simply because I think that we are a diverse and inclusive island, and in order to properly embrace that and encourage more people to represent the various communities in the island, I think it's time that we do consider that. It is a slightly radical idea at the moment, and it hasn't been accepted by the Assembly yet, but perhaps it will one day. But at the moment, we are as we are, and of course people can naturalise if they so wish, and many do. Regarding Condor, our neighbours in Guernsey tried to buy their airline. Well, they did buy their airline, actually. And I'm aware that it hasn't been a straightforward process, and so I wouldn't advocate a purchase directly. But what I do think we need to do is concentrate on what islanders want, and that is a good service that is at a reasonable cost. And therefore, I believe that we do need to negotiate very carefully with whoever takes on the next contract and ensure that islanders receive the service that they want for a good price. We could help that by perhaps encouraging more export from the island. I'm aware that currently the potato crop and the milk exports are encouraging a driving down of the price because they are filling space on routes away from the island, which of course helps because we bring a lot into the island also.
I'm Jersey born, and I believe that anybody that is taken up our nationality should be able to stand. I don't think anybody without appropriate interest in the island should be able to stand for election. Moving on to Condor, I couldn't believe when they renewed their contract and there was other interest, probably, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, that Condor got it, because their service was slack then, and it definitely hasn't got any better. But what the solution to that is maybe to try and encourage other people and get in negotiations with other companies and see exactly who would want to come here and start preparing for that case. Thank you.
On Condor, I think we'll all agree that the island has been served very badly, and I simply wonder what questions were asked behind the scenes. Why weren't people held to account over this? I think that's really regrettable, and the thing that makes it difficult is that when we realise the service is so poor and we want to break out of it, we risk taking all sorts of penalty clauses and spending huge amounts of money, which clearly wouldn't be in the public interest. But on the point about buying Condor, I'd be the same as the other candidates. I couldn't support it. You just have to look at Aurigny in Guernsey and the millions that they lose on that. There's got to be a better way of doing it than simply having the government run it. I was born in the current St Helier General Hospital, and I suppose at this rate, so will my grandchildren probably. I'm a British citizen, and I am proud to be British. I'm also proud of my Breton heritage. I like being a mix like that. I think, though, that it is ridiculous that you can come to Jersey from Pitcairn Island, which is a British overseas territory, as far away from Jersey as it is possible to be without going into outer space, do nothing for 2 years, and you can stand for the States. Yet somebody who moved from Madeira at 6 months old, worked and paid their taxes for 40 years, has known no other home than Jersey, served in the honorary police, can't stand for the States of Jersey. The sole criterion for being a States member should be having the support of the public. It should not be based on what document you do or don't possess.
Okay. On the British citizens, I'm born in Jersey. I was actually born at the old maternity hospital, which is now the Labar Centre. And with regards to Condor, we have an issue in terms of how we manage contracts in the States, and we have numerous amounts of reports to suggest that there are issues with how we manage contracts in the States. Would I buy it? Well, no, because we're just as bad at running companies as we are at managing contracts. So there is a serious issue because it's an unviable route for many companies to take on, and we want to try and obtain value for money. And we need to try and identify whether there is possibly alternatives. But we need to do better on our negotiation and managing our contracts with the current proprietor at the moment and identify a more appropriate ship to assist the island, getting especially from here to the UK. Thank you.
I'm Jersey born. As far as Condor is concerned, we've got a real problem. We've got a very bad service, but frankly, I don't think there's anybody else that wants the service. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We have not got a good facility, but who will take it over? And I feel that we are landed with what we've got, and we've got to try and improve it in whatever way we can.
Right, Condor, I don't think it's the right vessel for this sort of sea. The United States Navy bought some of these, actually, and they had to get rid of them because they kept breaking down when they were chasing baddies, and the baddies thought it was fantastic, because when they saw one coming along, they knew they could get away. And I agree, government should never try and pick a winner in an industry. It's rubbish. The Isle of Man, which is an equally bad piece of sea, they have the old-fashioned ferries. They haven't got tempted into these. You know, our old British rail boats rarely stopped. It may have been because the captains were all on the Murmansk convoys and things like that. I know Captain Pico was. You know, and if you can do that, you can do anything. I was born in Manchester. I came here, must be something like 30 years ago. I came for 6 months. You haven't got rid of me yet. I do feel, though, that I don't know any country which allows people with dual nationality, or who is not a citizen, sorry, forget the dual nationality. I don't know any country where if you don't have the nationality, you are allowed to stand for the legislature. Now, Sir Philip Balash says that, and I think he might be right. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this is my domicile of choice, and I do claim to have a bit of Jersey heritage because my son is a Jerseyman.
When there are no breakdowns, Condor works reasonably well, but when there is a breakdown, they don't have the backup of the fleet to cover it. And these are the conversations I've been having with Condor over the last 3 years. Our hands are tied slightly because there is an agreement in place. But we're currently negotiating to change that agreement, and Condor are considering replacing one of their freight-only ships with another Condor clipper. And we're quite advanced in those negotiations. And I think that would provide a good solution and certainly provide the backup when one of the ships goes technical. And in transport, that happens. I don't think you'll ever have a time when there's a fleet of ships when one won't go wrong from time to time. For example, the Rapide has now been booked into dry dock for 48 hours in the middle of June because it has to have a minor service issue. There's nothing we can do about that, but that will cause disruption because they haven't got the proper backup, and I'm fighting to get it. I'm fighting really hard to try and get them to invest. It's a £50 million investment. There's £300 million invested in the Condor fleet, and the taxpayer doesn't want to have to take on that sort of risk. I was born in Jersey in the maternity hospital in St Saviour's Road at about lunchtime because my father never forgave me for interrupting his lunch on the 18th of April 1964. And if I went to live in another country and I wanted to stand for their parliament, I would expect to take on their nationality. Thank you.
Mrs. Norton, I'm a British subject and I'm very proud of it. I was born to a father who is a 91-year-old Chelsea pensioner. He's one of the few who served in the Second World War. And he met my mother while serving in Asia, who's, well, my mother unfortunately is deceased, but she was half Dutch and half, well, a bit Chinese and a bit French, actually. So I'm Heinz 57, and I'm also... I love this island. When I came here over 26 years ago, from the moment I fell in love, to the point where I have given up the last 2 years of my life trying to fight for a little piece of the island just to be kept for tourism. And coming to the subject of tourism, yes, Condor. I don't think that the best use of the island's money is to buy Condor, but you have highlighted a real problem that we have. A couple of problems, actually. One is the lack of investment in our tourist infrastructure. At the moment, £5 million goes into Visit Jersey to boost our tourism, to get 1 million visitors a year. And I do joke to people sometimes, where they're going to sleep? On the beach? You made a point, it's about procurement, it's about the content of contracts. That's why it's useful to have a lawyer in the States, everybody. You know, somebody who knows about negotiating contracts, but even if it's not at ministerial level, even if it's further down, if you look at my manifesto, you'll see that I have proposals about how you can improve the actual delivery of the civil service by involving more volunteers who are specialists, volunteers, cheap, who know about these things, who can actually contribute business expertise.
Thank you. Jersey, throughout its history, has always welcomed immigrants, not only French, but of course from the United Kingdom as well. You here in St Saviour has the famous Sir John Everett Millais, who was born in England and painted Lily Lamprey. I was born in England. I met a most beautiful Jersey girl from, sadly not St Saviour, but from St Juan. I swooned, we got married, and she brought me here. Some of you may wish she hadn't. I do think that there should be a bar to joining the states of Jersey, and I do think that the current bar of being a British citizen is a reasonable one until we had some own citizenship test of our own. With regard to Condor, for me it's all about reliability. I've been stuck in the UK with my family for 5 days. Islanders want to see reliability. Senator Farnum and I sit with the chairman of the investment holding company, and we have the strongest possible words with them. We know they're in an investment fund, they're thinking of sale. This is an opportunity for us to get a better deal from them before it's sold on, and also it's why I'm talking about the competition regulator, the JCRA, during this election, because they jolly well should pull their finger out as well and make sure that there are better prices and that that service is more reliable. We shouldn't be doing it ourselves. As other panellists have said, we only need to look to Guernsey to see how not to do it.
Thank you very much. A very interesting question. Where were you born? I'm very proud to be a Jerseyman. I hold a Jersey birth certificate, but I was actually born in London. I was adopted at the age of 3 weeks. And that's brilliant, because I've got all of the heritage and none of the genes. As to Condor, I think the problem is with Condor, it's been mismanaged completely by the previous minister and the current minister, because the contract is so heavily in favour of Condor. We actually can't do anything about it. Our hands are tied. Would I buy Condor? No, I would not. However, what we have to do is have a reliable and viable service, sea-linked to the UK and France. It is vitally important to the island we have that. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. There is a way around that, which is we as an island invest in the vessels, but we outsource the operation and running of them to a third party, such as P&O, people like that who've got years and years of experience in it. It means they don't have to invest millions, which they're not going to do. They're not going to come near us because of the initial investment, because all P&O boats are too long to get into the harbour. So they would have to invest in a new fleet. So if we could invest in a new fleet, we could give that reliability, but we don't want to operate it because, let's face it, government does not run companies well. Let's use expertise that is out there, but let's make sure we have a reliable, viable service throughout the year. Thank you.
I'll deal with the question of nationality. I was Italian born, British bred, and I have a UK citizenship. But I think the important thing about heritage is this. There's 6 billion people on this planet. You've all arrived holding the baton of evolution. You're all special. You're here, you've made it, you've got the baton. That's the important thing. I wish I could measure loyalty rather than nationality as a measurement of what Jersey should be. I've got a British Jersey passport. Right. Clear, make it clear. Sorry. I just don't think it's important, but anyway.
The question was, as far as I can see,
yep.
Are you British citizens if you were not born in Jersey? Or was that?
If you're not born in Jersey, have you been naturalised?
There's sort of different words used, citizenship.
I'm sorry, that's not the question. You used the words British citizen, I think.
Right. Anyway, I have a Jersey passport.
Let me just check.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
When?
Can someone translate what naturalisation means?
When did you get your British passport, she's asking?
Oh, here in Jersey.
No, how long ago?
When? 5-6 years ago. Yeah, that's right, I did.
This is not an interrogation.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Sorry, I'm not going to allow an interrogation.
Yeah, okay, but anyway, on the factual basis, everyone's parents here were black. You all came out of Africa, all right? And now you're holding the baton of evolution. That's it. So we're all very lucky to be here. Now, on the subject of Condor, I opened up my speech by saying it's very important to have financial accountability, because it doesn't, wait a minute, it doesn't really matter what people say here. What you want is the evidence. State funding of anything, purchase of anything, you should have the ability to log on and to see. But I wanted to use this question, but because of the difficulty I've had, I wanted to use this question for...
I'm sorry, I gave you an extra 10 seconds because of
10?
the interruptions.
10? She took half a minute or more from me.
This is why I tried to stop her, but I didn't succeed. This is why I tried to stop her, but I didn't succeed. In a nutshell, would you buy Condor?
Not Condor, no.
Thank you.
No. I wouldn't buy Condor, but the routes are very important to France, 370 million people.
Thank you very much.
UK, yes.
And can I just make the point? I know you had a question about whether he was answering the question. It's for you to decide whether he's answered the question. Interruptions do take time out of there, and it's not fair to the candidates. So once you've asked your question, please don't enter into a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
It may surprise you to know with my surname that I am actually Jersey. In fact, at school they used to call me the newcomer because I was only third generation. As far as Condor is concerned, absolutely no. Under no circumstances would I buy Condor. There's obviously been a terrible mess somewhere, and Condor was part of it, so I would like to start again. I remember when I was a young kid, when the mail boats, that used to do a not more reliable service. Okay, it was sheer hell over the winter in the high seas, but it still got here. And so what on earth has gone wrong? We're supposed to be a better and more technological society, and yet our super-duper amazingly designed boats aren't doing the same as an old tugboat, effectively. So something has to be looked at in that respect.
Thank you very much. Now, it's 9:24. I'm going to take one more question. The first hand I saw up was a gentleman there, and you're going to answer in 30 seconds. So the bell will go after 30 seconds, and it's got to be a question which can be answered in 30 seconds.
I've got exactly the one for you. Population. Should there be a limit, and at what limit?
Right. Let's start with Mr. Baudin.
Well, we did have a limit of 90,000, but of course that policy has been completely overlooked. Where do we start now? We can't start sending people home. I'm not quite sure what we do. We certainly need an immigration policy, and we need to find out what an appropriate number is. I think we're hanging around about 110,000 at the moment. We need to stop bringing in more people all the time to do jobs that we could be doing here without bringing in immigrants.
Thank you. Back in the 19th century, we saw a peak of people migrating to the island for economic reasons. There are sometimes peaks and plateaus in any trend. We have experienced a peak recently, but I do believe it might calm down naturally because as artificial intelligence, technological changes occur, we will focus on a more skilled approach to people coming into the island, and I think that we will see a change in the trend.
One of our problems is we have an ageing population demographic, which is going to give Jersey a population problem for 30 years. My father and mother are still alive. They were from huge families, 5 and 7 children. My father and his brother, 6, 7 brothers, all had 4 or 5 children. So 30 years from now, we will all be gone, so your population will start dropping over the next 30-year period and make it easier for the rest of everybody.
You have to be careful with limits, just in that, you know, what happens if a doctor retires or something like that and we've already hit our limit. So there does have to be a degree of flexibility when we end up in those situations. What we need is a work permit system to stop the 500 to 700 people graduating every year. And what we can do to mitigate this is we can support automation in industries where that's happening, whether we want it to or not, and also by improving on-island training so businesses don't automatically have to constantly go out the island to bring people in, to make sure we've got the skills here already.
It's completely disingenuous to put a limit on the number of population because actually we're not counting in and out, and there is no system to count in and out. So it'd be completely disingenuous of me to say that we should put a limit on it. And my particular view on the population, I have actually in my manifesto the skills gap and bringing in a work permit system, which depends on individual system, where it's to the person rather than the actual business as a whole. But it's in my manifesto.
I agree with Tracy. We need work permits, and that's all we need is work permits, and people should have a work permit to come to the island to work.
Can you turn your microphone off, please?
I've already talked about work permits and the population, and I've also mentioned Guernsey have stabilised, I think I did, stabilised their population. You know, how did they do it? We do need some immigration, but not at 700 a year. We need to do more home growing of talents. I agree with everybody else about work permits. And Waitrose, when you do your own checkout, that's automation. Fewer girls on the checkout desk.
Thank you.
I think a population figure will be difficult to manage. A target, yes, but with some degree of flexibility. As I said in my speech last night, the night before last at St Clement, we need to produce more local grown talent, especially apprenticeships, the construction industry. Let's create more opportunities and create new apprenticeships for trades, men and women. Turn some of our young people into skilled trades, men and women, and yes, time-limited work permits. Thank you.
Yes, there should be some sort of limit of population, but quite how far in the future when, you know, at the moment I'm focusing on actually supporting the controls that have been introduced and saying they need to go further to do this homegrown, the training, to make sure that we're using our resources effectively so we don't use up all our land, so we actually can provide our children a future where they can come back to the island and not be replaced by UK people because they've just been brought because there hasn't been sufficient training locally.
In St Clement, we had the last question and 30 seconds to answer on population as well. It is a very complex issue. An overall limit doesn't work. We need a sensible approach where government is communicating and cooperating with business. We are proposing a time-limited work permit, but we have to do it carefully together so that we have good economic growth. But Brexit, technology is going to change population flows anyway. I'm talking about a Digital Skills Academy and a University for Jersey because they are part of the solution.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see.
Wow. The last answer to the question, was that a yes or a no? I couldn't quite work it out. We need to have firm targets, yes, but we've got to be flexible to meet demands. One of the problems is we can't put a handle on who is actually doing what job, where, and for how long. So why not have work permits for everyone in the working population that are employee, employer related and job related, so you can put a time limit on any work permit you wish for. Covers all sectors, finance, tourism and agriculture. It's control.
I opened up by saying ministerial government doesn't work, it delivers bad policy. And this is one of the areas. Tourism, short-term contracts through the summer period should be fairly free. But if I get into office, there's no question you're going to need work permits because I will make this island and teach some of these people about principles and direction. You will need work permits to stop those people from coming here.
Thank you.
David Attenborough recently did a TV program called How Many People Can the Earth Sustain? And I think that's a worthwhile question to ask about Jersey. How many people can we sustain on this island before this island becomes a place that nobody wants to live in? Personally, I would prefer a figure of 75,000, but that's probably a little bit unrealistic.
Okay, work permits with flexibility is the first priority. Secondly, why not reintroduce the census? I was at loggerheads with Frank Walker when he was Chief Minister and I was Chairman of the Jersey Rights Association. And we argued about the costings. Maybe the reintroduction of the census will give us some idea how many people are here. I've got a figure of 102,000, but is that the right figure? Statistics Department turned around and said, well, we'll tell you how many people are here. Have they? We don't know. Thank you.
Okay, I refer you to a high-level scrutiny report we did very recently, which gives you some of the issues. Yes, we can't have an absolute limit, but we do need proper controls and flexibility, we've all heard. But first and most importantly, we need the data. We need to understand who's coming in and what's happening across the socio-economic spectrum and what benefit and impact they have on our finances and generally on the island. We don't have that data. We need it, and this should have been far higher up on the agenda in the last 3.5 years because we're now on the back foot because we've got to get the data to make the decisions. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
A fixed limit of population, no, I don't think it's manageable. We do need a migration at the front end of the next government that all sectors of the economy understand and can work to. It's got to include time-limited stays, but it's certainly got to be flexible enough for agriculture, who really are struggling to attract staff. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we said we'd close at 9:30. We're going to close now, but I'd just like to say a few words. First of all, thank you to Madam Constable for delegating. Anyway, it's been a bit of fun. The other thing is, thank you all for coming out, and we've had 5 very good questions, quite testing questions as well. And finally, I must thank the candidates for the way they've conducted themselves tonight. We've really never had to worry about pressing bells too hard, and they've all stuck to the rules, and they've delivered their answers in the time allowed, and I thank them for their cooperation in making this event so successful. And I wish you all good night.